Oh, look at that. Dana. Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
It's only been 2 years.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
Yeah. Matt, you and your hubby both. Did you? You did not.
Haven't decided. End of the month? End of the month?
No, it's the end of the month.
Oh, Ryan. Him. My.
Cool.
Yeah, she just.
Here the screens were like this big. Like I was like, this is
Upgraded. Got a packed house.
Occasionally get like one person. Now you guys all got the updated master.
Read the water. I did not get all the way through all. Pride.
When I first started the commission, we were working. But they hadn't adopted. We just. I was like, oh, thank goodness, I know these. I could just get through it.
I know. I've
know
seen
these. I've seen them.
Red is 17.
I
I
I was disheartened with
him
federal
a lot
politics.
of graphics.
There's a lot more of the sewer.
In the sewer, yeah. Exactly. So
Problems getting commissioners because it's a little more like it's very dense, hard.
Still a Zoom. Not a
when I
person.
got, were you
No, I missed the orientation.
okay? So I didn't mean.
No, unfortunately, it was
They explained at orientation that you only had one meeting
okay.
in the prior year, so
And-
I imagine that was.
It was on. It was.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was more the previous. There was more than one. Or it
Yeah,
was more
they
frequent.
meet every
But
I
it
would-
was.
Okay, good evening, and welcome to the December 9th meeting of the West Sacramento Environment and Utilities Commission. Our first step is to do the Pledge of Allegiance. So, Katie, could you lead us?
To the flag of the United States, the republic which it stands, under God, visible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Katie. Tonight's agenda and related agenda report are available on the city's website at cityofwestsacramento.org. A reminder to everyone that requests to speak cards should be completed and turned into the clerk prior to the completion of any staff presentation. For those speakers wishing to speak on items not on the agenda, but within the jurisdiction of this commission, please write the item number on your card. All speakers will be limited to 3 minutes. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and televised, so all speakers, in order to be recognized, must be called on by the chair and come forward to the microphone. Speaking in public may cause some individuals to be uncomfortable, so everyone is asked to be professional and respectful. So item number 1 for the evening is presentations by the public on matters not on the agenda within the jurisdiction of the commission.
I have no request to speak.
Okay, so we are going to move on to item 2 of the regular agenda, consideration of selection of chairperson and vice chairperson for the Environmental and Utilities Commission. So I'd ask that we have 2 separate nominations for chair and vice chair. Anyone like to lead in the nomination?
I'll nominate myself for chair.
I'll nominate myself for vice chair. I'll second your nomination.
And I'll second his.
Okay, so let's do a vote for chair. So for, raise your hand for Dana Cordano for chair. And that's 5. Dana?
Dana, and then you.
Correct.
And the second was Alex. Thank you.
And can we have a raising of hands for Alex for vice chair? So 5 votes for Alex for vice chair. So unanimous for both.
And the second for that was you, Suzanne? Suzanne Reed?
Correct.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to do a little switcheroo here. It's just a moment.
Dana,
All right, thank you. Okay, we are going to move to item number 3, which is the presentation of the 2024 Water Master Plan update.
Hello, I'm Amber Wallace, a senior civil engineer who works in the Capital Project Department of the City of West Sacramento. I'm going to be presenting the Water Master Plan, the big, complicated document that has a lot of benefits for the city, but it also outlines some of the challenges we have with running a water district. So I wanted to present you, try not to present too much information. So I don't want to bore you with being a typical engineer, but I want to also let you know what it is so that you understand why we're here and why it's important. Or do I do it here?
You can do it as well.
Oh, okay. The city water system supplies treated water to 55,000 residents and industrial and commercial customers. The system includes the George Christoph Water Treatment Plant in the north part of the city, 8 storage tanks, 9 booster stations, and over 200 miles of pipeline. The master plan presents projections of future development. So we went over the general plan, and we looked at what development we're expecting. We talked with community development and looked at anything that was newer from the last approved general plan. So we also looked at the existing water lines in the water lines, the storage tanks, the booster station, and the treatment plant, and looked for like if it's old, if it's too small, if it's broken. We projected the future water system infrastructure needs based on like current regulations with the state and based on future development. And this was last updated in 2015. It was last approved in 2017, so it's only really about 5 years old. We worked with Public Works, Community Development, Finance, and Capital Projects. We started with the general plan and made further assumptions based on more recent data and identified triggers so that the infrastructure is not built too early or too late. So that would be big water lines that would serve new development such as Yarborough, which we all hear about all the time. And then a renew and replace plan for all the aging infrastructure, which is typically in like the north part of West Sac and like old Sacramento, old West Sacramento, like in Linden Acres, or, well, we just redid those water lines, but there are other older parts of town that are in the south area that we'll need to look at too. Oh, I'm not changing the slide, sorry guys. So the conclusions of the master plan include there's growth projections in the south and along the riverfront. Expansion needs are triggered to meet new developments as they develop, and not too early, not too late. So, and we want the developers to pay their fair share. So they pay for what they're going to need when they're building their new housing infrastructure. And sometimes that's difficult because there'll be a smaller developer that like triggers the whole project, but there's going to be a bigger developer later that's going to need to pay for most of the new water line. So it's kind of an interesting, way to like figure out when the city pays for something and then the developer pays us back, or the developer pays for something and then we have other developers pay for them. It's kind of a whole system that we're planning around this new infrastructure. And then, like we said, the original water system in the north is almost at the end of its life. So there's a lot of rehab and replacement needed for that as well. Here we go. So for the capital improvement plan, we have $131 million for the first 5 years. And that does not include developer projects. But if you see the blue bar and the red bar on top indicates how much money we anticipate that developers will be having to spend on improvements in the system too. That's based on the general plan, and it can be a little, I think it's, we don't know that those projects are going to hit like right away. Like we keep hearing that projects get delayed, so we don't know when the development's going to hit. So it may happen soon or it may not, depending on how they get through their progress. But mostly this cost includes updating old pipelines, tanks, and the wastewater treatment plant. And so right now we're currently at $9 million per year just for repair and replacement of the water system, of the old water system. And in the future that would increase due to larger system and increased costs. But for the first 5 years, that's what we anticipate. So the implementation of the plan will be developers pay their fair price for their project triggered by development. And then we will, and then the city will pay for all the rehab and rehabilitation of the existing system. And then we also have planning tools to allow more frequent updates of the water master plan and when things are triggered due to development. So we kind of created a complex model to like figure out when new development comes in, like if it starts, if it triggers a new development and then there's a new water line that's needed, we figure out how to like pay for it by development. Yeah. So right now, that's the water master plan. I'll take any question.
I have a question.
Yes, Alexander.
So we currently only have one water treatment plant for the entire city, the
Correct.
Project Bright. Is there any discussion or any work to use our existing surface water allocation to potentially have a second water treatment plant as a backup in case it fails, or to serve, for example, the full build out that's projected?
There is no plan for a second water treatment plant. There are plans for additional water sources. We have considered doing recycled water. We're considering including wells. We're considering building a pipeline under the river to the city of Sacramento so that we'd have other, what?
Is that the intertie?
Like an intertie
That
to.
was discussed in the plan?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. So those are ways to improve the reliability of the system. And in case there's an emergency and the water treatment plant isn't working, we still have water and fire suppression for the city of West Sac. So we do have plenty of plans. They're still in early phases though.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Any other questions?
So just, can I make a note about that point, Amber?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just wanted to, just for everyone's edification, there's the physical supply of the water treatment plant. There's also the water contracts that the city has. And currently, we do have a fairly robust water contract portfolio. So, some cities are close to maxing out their water contracts during droughts and things like that. But there are some pockets of issues, but generally speaking, the city's pretty lucky with our contract supply.
Madam Chair? Good evening.
Good evening.
I am a member of the Yellow County Climate Action Commission, so most of my questions are trying to understand the context within which you are planning to meet our water needs operationally and as. And one of the impressions that I got from reading this plan was that it's very growth and demand driven, and also primarily, to a great extent, coordinated with the general plan. In the context of climate action and adaptation, I think we see a lot of uncertainty in the future of things like water supply. And so my first question, and also my first question goes to the issue of, to what extent does this plan integrate or interact in any way with the city's climate action planning activity, which is ongoing and has been for, I think, contemporaneously with climate development? And how does that interact with the kinds of climate scenarios that the state of California, and particularly Northern California and the region, are looking at with respect to both climate action and how?
Well, I don't know that we went that deep into integrating with the city's climate action plan, but I think that's a really good point, and I think we should look into that. So I am going to look at the current city's climate action plan and get back to you with an answer. That's okay.
Yes, it is. I also was interested in, you indicated that you have been following the state regulations, and I assume also some of the regulations that are in process of being revised. And so one of my questions with respect to your reliance on demand scenarios is regarding the nature, the kind of development that we're going to experience here in West Sacramento, and especially to the extent that new Title 24 standards regulating building energy conservation and efficiency, and also going to the issue of water efficiency. It's a changing landscape, unintended, because landscape considerations may also be revised in accordance with expectations regarding drought and water. So I was wondering the extent to whether there's any flexibility in the plan and your process over the next 5-year implementation period for integrating and updating the assumptions upon which your process is.
I want to say that the urban water management plan, which is not this plan, is more what you're asking about. And yeah, did you want to talk? This is Jim. He worked with Van Harrow on this project, so I'd like to let him. Thank you.
Evening, Jim Crowley with Zanhero. We were the consultants for the water master plan. And I just want to add a little bit of detail to that question with the flexibility.
Okay.
So you'll notice in the master plan document where we talk about the urban water use objectives, which is a state requirement that all water suppliers will need to reduce their demands down to, it keeps going lower and lower, but it's 45 gallons per capita day inside. And then they're going to come up with a landscape budget as well that they'll be applying to all the purveyors. And that's what purveyors will need to work with their customers to get the demands down. So that's a perfect example of where demands are going to be going down over time. So when we created our demand projection model for this project, we built a big GIS that is going to allow us to modify these demand factors as we go forward. So we can reduce the demand factors as these regulations start to come into play, and we can also change the individual land use of each parcel as the development regulations start to come into play. Right now, what we've projected is what the general plan has with respect to land use type, number of housing units, acres of commercial development or industrial development. And so the tool that we created will allow us to modify all those elements going forward to adjust to what's actually on the.
Thank you. My last question and then a comment.
Yeah.
You have a pathway, triggering pathway forth. Have you also examined an adaptation pathway that takes into consideration what elements fit into as you rehabilitate infrastructure that requires attention right now and build new infrastructure also may, for instance, we have an 8% loss of water that you just projected forward in the system, whether there are any new things that can happen to increase the efficiency of the system overall, or in terms of the construction process itself that can benefit the result of the landscape to water flooding, other wildfire, whatever may.
So the water loss, that's another element of that urban water use objectives for this city. I think that the tool that we created gives flexibility to adjust all those planning factors. So we focused on the ability to adjust things and not so much on the actual event that would cause that.
And one of our, I want to ask, one of our next projects to look at water loss and try to where we're experiencing water loss and try to areas and that's something we're looking into a project because it's there's a technology for how to do that and they use list by try to water.
My overall comment to amplify my overall bias to considering climate change and climate change impacts and adaptation is making sure that the execution is integrated in a way that allows different in silos, but that there's interaction among all the departments, things like integration with the climate action plan that bring us forward in a more holistic way, which has been this document as an objective. So just so you know where I'm. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Ryan and myself are trying to coordinate our efforts better, but have that kind of overall look at
And to your point, Suzanne, you know, I mentioned before that we do have a robust water supply contract. However, the legislation that brought forth the framework and the water budgets is happening now. So it started last year, and we were working on our budget now, and we're currently under budget. That's good. But the nice thing about that budget-based approach is it's not stagnant. So as our population increases and as the standards get sharper, the stricter our water usage will need to be. So even outside of whether this city, I mean, I certainly want our city to be efficient with our water use. I spent the last 8 years doing 700 house calls around this city. And a lot of people, you know, just have leaks or they don't know how to set their timers correctly, and there's a lot of education needed. But there's also, just so you know, the state is trying to work towards being equitable so that each city of its size is asked to be more efficient with their water use kind of at the annual level. So I think it's a great question and comment, and I continue to strive for us to be more efficient.
Just because you triggered it, no, I don't want to dominate my room. I was trying to do weather stripping in my house. One of the doors, the thing came off, the thingy came off. And I went to one of our local retailers, and they really couldn't help me there in terms of what I actually needed and what would work on my door. And so it's not just, you know, in those communities where even the smallest technical detail of what piece of thing that I need that will help me be more efficient in my energy or water use. I think it's population-wide. So perhaps our local retailers would cooperate with us in terms of having some workshops, and you know, and they sell their stuff,
Sure.
but they couldn't really even help me find it in the store. So my net from an. Thank you very much for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if I could jump on that one point, one of the actions within the climate action plan is doing home energy audits.
Mm-hmm.
So that is something that we would be working towards, is being able to go to a home and provide education at that kind of level about things that residents can do to save on their bill, but also reduce their emissions.
Yeah, exactly. We have 183 measures and strategies in our climate adaptation plan, which, as you may know, was adopted by our Board of Supervisors last week. And there's still a gap between education about even the audit, where are you losing energy, where you are not efficient, and the technical capacity to make the repair or
Right.
So I think associating that with some kind of technical support to implement it is. Thank you. Again.
Just more a comment, I guess, and building on the conversation that's been happening. I was surprised that the demand or the predicted demand in the budget looks to be almost double what our current usage is. And I think that's at full build out. And, you know, along the lines of what Ryan was mentioning, you know, as a state with population growth, we've seen our water use kind of stay constant or even trend downward. And so I know we need to plan for kind of the worst case scenario of what we might need in the future. But in the context of climate change, I think conservation and new construction being built to the current standards, hopefully we won't see our water use going up the way that kind of is predicted here, which I think is frankly alarming because during times of drought, that water supply might not be there. And so, you know, I don't think this is going to happen here, but we don't want to be Phoenix constraining growth because we don't have the water that we need. So I appreciate the projection, but again, my hope would be that through good conservation and working with our developers, that we will not be needing double the water that we currently utilize here in the city, even with amazing industrial, commercial, and residential growth in the future.
I agree that maybe the predictions are a little high, but it's it really gives us the push to make sure that we have those additional water sources and look for conservation efforts. And this is it's not a likely scenario because we're in California and the regulations are going to get tougher and tougher, but it would be a likely scenario if we were somewhere where that didn't happen. And I think the water projections for now are what they're a little, yeah, because we don't take into account a lot of reduction, but that is going to happen because of good people like Ryan here making sure that we the whole city reduces. So we're going to be working on that as well. So I don't anticipate it to get that high either.
I'd like to,
It's a planning document, so
like to ask a question about that.
absolutely.
So we're kind of addressing the driest dries situation of climate change and water. So droughts potentially more intense, more prolonged. Wet periods are also potentially projected to be more intense, prolonged. Do we have some sort of plan or infrastructure in place? And this may be a better conversation for the sewer plan discussion, so please stop. But do we have any sort of plan in place for dealing with excessive water flows, or maybe upgrading piping capacity or pumping capacity to direct water where it needs to go or out of the city as needed?
So that's more the storm drain master plan. And then also, you're right, the sewer does tend to get infiltration from rain. So we do deal with that in that plan as well. But the water pipes are all under pressure, which means that we don't get infiltration.
And we have enough pump pressure capacity to keep those lines pressurized and prevent intrusion even under a pretty prolonged flood scenario?
Yeah, because the city of West Sacramento sometimes has very high groundwater. It can cover those pipes. So it's why we have so many tanks in our systems and pumps. It keeps the pressure throughout the system. And that's why anytime you turn on any tap, it comes out. Which is a pretty cool thing.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions?
Yes, I have a question or observation. I think a few meetings ago, been some time, I brought up the issue of the meters not being accurate, which is it was because it was measured in some large centi-gallon, 100-gallon, whatever it was, measure that you couldn't tell how much you've saved. So while the state was simultaneously asking for a 15% reduction, there's no way that data could show you got 15% reduction. And since then, they've updated my meter. Great. But I believe not all meters were updated and not all city locations have meters. I don't know if that's part of the plan. Has it been updated since so that everybody has the data, one, and two, you have the data on usage, and three, since you have that, then would you not have the mechanism to detect those issues where there's wastewater? So somebody has a leak that's going on, they had set their sprinklers too long or too much. When you have that detected, if you have that data and you have the system now?
So as far as the water meters, we have done a lot of work in updating and putting in water meters. I believe there's nobody in the city who doesn't have a water meter. But if that's not the case, please contact myself, Amber Wallace. That's totally fine because we want to get everyone with a water meter. So there are water meters that aren't up to current standards, and we have been updating them as efficiently as possible. So there's a big project where we're going to actually just go out and take them out and put in new ones. But we did kind of an interim project where we tried to update them electronically, and it was a pretty good success. And then also we've updated the water meters as we've done any water project just in the last few years. So I think in the next year or two, we should be more on track with most of the city being on current water.
And just to add to that, since you may have the data now, since 2015, you had this estimate, you have updated building standards. I'm not sure, because you have a multiplier here for each additional single-family unit. I would imagine with new updated standards that the consumption per single-family unit would decrease for every new home because they have better or more efficient standards, or the regulation says you can't have this type of landscaping. I know, at least from the data that I have, that in the summer months, my water consumption increases, by an order of magnitude simply because I'm watering. So that's the landscape issue. But I'm wondering if part of your estimate should consider the updated codes, and every new unit should have a smaller footprint subsequent. And that's for each development, I would understand, and maybe that's your model, to say this is in whatever year 1, and then by year 5, it gets more efficient every year as you learn and as the regulations improve. That would reduce the need for additional capacity.
Yeah, that's why we update the model, because things like that will change, and there are new regulations coming out that will show improvement in newer construction. But the older construction still has to come up to those standards.
Right, and that's why I was understanding that.
Yeah.
In your graphs and tables, I don't see that distinguishing, but that might be your model underneath.
It's more like the model is assumptions, and some of the assumptions are conservative. Yeah. And so that would be an example of a conservative consumption, that everybody's like more older, because most of the residents right now have an older system. Maybe people have updated, their washer machines and their dishwashers and all that, but maybe they haven't, Maybe they're complying with timing and stuff, but maybe they're not. So it's kind of conservative at this point.
Well, I took a tour of the treatment plant.
Oh, yeah.
And they mentioned, the question I asked was, when you implemented the rates, when people actually had to pay for additional utilization of water, did the usage go down? They said, yeah, significantly. So that's one where behavior changes across the board because of one change. Now, I'm not advocating for higher rates, but I also just observe as I walk through my neighborhood to say, hey, some people are changing their lawns to a dry lawn, dry landscaping, and maybe not to save water, maybe to save on landscaping costs in general, or maintenance costs that they have to pay. So maybe that's part of the observation. So I don't know if that's in I would think that the data would show it if you had data for each home, and you could identify neighbors and neighborhoods, say, hey, we expected this much, but it's really this much, and investigate what's going on to see the actual pattern in the area. So that could be driven by something completely different, but that informs your model.
I came with a question. Do we even have staff available to examine the data with that level of granularity?
We do, and we need to. And in fact, I think there are regulations that require us to. It's just not in this plan specific. Maybe Ryan can speak a little bit.
Yeah, so Peter, one of your questions was, what do we do with this data? So a few years ago, I started doing outreach to the highest water users. So every month, I would generate a report of last month's water use. And, your point about staffing, because at the time, I was the water conservation representative for the whole city. So it was me versus everybody. But so I couldn't reach out to as many people as I wanted, but I started with the top 100 people who were using, 50 times more than somebody else. So just for a sense of reference, average indoor water use is about 3,000 to 5,000 gallons per month. When you turn the sprinklers on during the summer, it gets up to 20,000 to 30,000. We had people who 4 months were using over 100,000 gallons of water per month. So those were it sounds kind of simple, but I took that data and I printed out envelopes and I sent it off, and people would call back and say, there's no way this is right. The meter must be broken. And then I come out there and they've got like a giant broken pipe or their sprinklers are running for an hour and they don't know it doesn't need to. So we've taken action with the data. We do that on a monthly basis. We also have what's called the water portal. So everybody who does have the upgraded meters can access their own water data, and they can sign up for leak alert. So that if a leak does happen, instead of just getting that high water bill at the end of the month, you can get alerted ahead of time. And then to the lawn conversion thing, we have recently launched the Lawn Be Gone program, which gives people up to $300 of compost and mulch toward covering and killing their lawn. So we are, it's not the most robust programs, but we are trying to make targeted actions and create long-term behavior change in conjunction with these plans.
And finance will be back with the rate study next year. So we'll be talking about rates. And I believe the urban water management plan will be next year or the year after. So we have a lot of different documents and regulations that we have to comply with, and they all cover different parts of our water. This is mostly just capital improvement projects, large development projects, just if the pipe is old or it just needs to be bigger, really, or the tank is old, or the water treatment plant has some old equipment. It's more like that. So it's more growth and just age related. But yeah, we have a lot of programs and reports that we'll be doing to investigate different, like with the climate change and with water reduction. Yeah, the state is really adding a lot of regulations onto us. So we'll be asking probably for some new staff as well with the with the rate study, because it is hard to keep up with all the regulations.
One more thing,
Yep.
changing between the utilities and environment side. I know some, I forget which city locally has a cisterns set up to capture the excess rainwater. So when good times are there, they could save it and use it for parks or whatever it is. I'm wondering in your model if there's anything that's innovative or creative that says, okay, we need to look at some of these things and consider it as options, as opposed to just, I'm going to add more capacity to our treatment plant. I'm going to add more pipes. Definitely that's needed. But if there's other things, I don't know if there's, there's, in one of the development, there's a golf course being built. So that's a lot of water, I would imagine. I don't know if part of the option there is that they build a cistern and they collect their own water and they could use that rather than tap into the city.
Well, the cistern idea, I think would be hard to use because we'd probably lose that water when it would probably evaporate or something. But I am looking into recycled water, and recycled water is either picking recycled water from the treatment plant in Elk Grove, because they have the Title 22 water, and pump it up here, or to actually divert out of our own sewer system and treat it here in West Sac and deliver it to parks and golf courses, stuff like that. It's a big undertaking, and I think that regulations of the future are going to really encourage us to do it. So I suggest that we start looking into it, and I've suggested that too. The upper management start looking into it. So hopefully we can get the first study started, but that's a 10, 20-year process, even if we start now. Unfortunately, it takes a while.
Yeah, I think I've seen their ads that says if you need water to water your lawns, come and get it with a big, get your container and go and get water and use that. And that's a way to save. So they're already advertising to individuals to utilize that water.
Which would mean driving down to the treatment plant.
Right.
Yeah, so, yeah, hopefully maybe one day we'll be able to pipe it into Southport, or have in the north area, like, it's our own little recycling plant. But those, just to get this just to start the studies will be a little bit of money, but it'll take time to get through each element of the regulation. But I'm thinking the state of California will help us as times get on, because they'll be wanting us to do it.
Is that something where a recommendation or support from this committee would be beneficial in any way?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm sure it would. Yeah, I think people understand the importance of recycled water. It just seems like a big undertaking, you know? So I think it's good to start sooner than later.
All right, I actually have a couple of questions,
Okay.
well, a couple of comments too. I really appreciate in this plan the triggering approach. You know, I live in an area that has that aging infrastructure, and it really allows us to focus our limited resources in those areas. So I just wanted to commend you guys for really thinking of that and thinking of the older communities. I know that a lot of times I live in Westfield right over here, and a lot of times like community members in my neighborhood, they don't feel that the city is really paying attention. So like one thing as a commissioner, I have been able to say that they are advocating for our, you know, our community, right? Like our little neighborhood. So thank you for that. And as part of that, you know, when we go through this and update all of this aging infrastructure in these older areas, a lot of times we have like smaller streets and we don't have as much room. And so like, what are your plans for really getting the education and outreach to the communities so that they're not overly inconvenienced, at least, you know, like, so they, like when these things happen? Because I know in the past we've had, in my neighborhood, we've had some like street improvements and things like that, and there isn't a lot of communication to the actual neighborhood. And then that causes, you know, I hear from my neighbor that causes a lot of strife. So I just wanted to know like what that communication plan is going to look like for these neighborhoods. And then also the, you know, consideration of there's a lot of like non-English speakers in these neighborhoods. And so like what are our plans for outreach for those communities too?
So typically when we do a water project or any kind of utility project, we provide a lot of outreach. So we send out mailers to each resident. We usually have a city website. We also have like a person for them to call. So sometimes it's myself, sometimes it's one of my staff, and you can call us directly and say, you know, someone's driving too fast or whatever the problem is, because we get it. These are your neighborhoods and we don't want anyone causing you problems, especially a contractor that we hire. So that's very important to the city. And then, so we just try to make it as communicative as possible with, you know, websites and updates and, you know, emails and mailers to everybody.
Yeah.
So,
I know a lot of people don't look at the mailers. So like my recommendation, just as living in this neighborhood, knowing these people in this community, I feel like something like a door-to-door, like something just latched on their door to notify them might be a lot easier. And like with options on there, that like a door flyer with options on to call somebody for different languages, you know, so like it's a very diverse community in the northern part of West Sac.
We usually provide all our mailers with a Russian and a Spanish update, like right in there. And then also sometimes, depending on the neighborhood, we'll add more languages if we know that there's a dominant language spoken in the neighborhood. And then we have a translation system online to help translate into other languages that maybe we didn't think of or we didn't know of. So hopefully we're improving with that, because we've been trying. The Capital Projects Department has made a really big effort to improve communication during
Yeah, and I see the flyers and everything, and I'm like, oh, this is great. And then I talk to my neighbors, they're like, I didn't even read it, I just threw it away. Like,
Oh,
and so that's the problem I'm seeing. Like, and then I also have some of my neighbors who, maybe they came from another country, so they're immigrants. A lot of times they don't rely as heavily on technology. So, like, that's a big thing that I think, like, door flyers or something would be really helpful in those areas. Just a recommendation.
Okay. Yeah, we usually do door hangers if we're impacting someone's access or parking to their home.
Yeah.
Because, or we're gonna be on their property, like with water meters.
Right,
You're not
yeah.
technically on their property because it's
Yeah.
the city right away, but we're on the lawn.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So with those, we put up door hangers so that like people know that they're there.
Yeah, I remember when my meter got updated. I got a door hanger.
Well, hopefully we did a good job.
It seems good, so. I don't
Okay,
know.
good.
That was really my only question, was just
Okay.
about outreach, yeah.
Comment on that outreach. I know I don't know, development group, that they've done community sessions.
Yeah.
So they've identified a location, and they have a meeting there for the neighborhood. And the last one I attended, which is at the boathouse in Southport, was well attended. It was almost full. So that might be another opportunity if these groups have an area they meet and maybe work with whatever group is there. That might be more effective because they seem to be using it in other areas of the city.
Yeah, so community meetings as well. And was this put on by Capital Projects or was it a meeting that was already happening?
I forget. It was the first
Oh,
one that
okay.
was offered at the time, and
Yeah, that was at the boathouse, right?
yeah, it was.
I believe I was there too. That was our department, Capital Projects. Because we're trying to be, like I said, we're trying to notify people better about construction projects.
So in that case, then you probably know that. Well, you'd know if it was well attended in other areas, but I thought it was pretty well attended for that area.
Yeah, that one was well attended. I don't think I went to the other one, but yeah, our director was great at those, giving out information about all our projects coming up.
Any other questions or comments? All right,
I got a whole new.
thank you so much. All right, well, we're gonna move to item number 4, the presentation of the 2024 sanitary sewer master plan update.
Okay,
No, there was no action, it was just comment.
yeah, these are just for.
Yeah.
We'll take them to city council on January 15th. And so they want to make sure that we've reviewed it with you guys and that you guys have asked your questions and any comments you have. We'll write them down and provide it for city council.
I just have a question on the process.
Sure.
Since we seem to be following the development, is that really the process? So we'd always find water and capacity. We have to follow development, whatever the city approves with development.
Yeah.
It will never be the other way around that says, no, we don't have capacity, you're going to not have to develop.
Well, it depends on the city's philosophy, and our philosophy is to provide whatever they need to develop. So need water and sewer to develop, we're going to provide it. And so that's a decision that the city does.
It's like,
Say again?
that was like Keith's comment on us wanting to not be like Phoenix, so not have lack of capacity or development.
And like thinking of those solutions now are gonna be more helpful in the future as we know that additional development's gonna happen in places than West Sacramento's fan, so.
Well, I'm wondering in terms of the commission and its work with other commissions, is there ever a time that one of the commissions will say, no, we disagree with this development because you're putting too much constraint on the environment or the utilities? I don't know if that's ever going to happen, or we just follow all the time development. Development will take the lead and they will tell you, this is what we need, make it happen somehow.
You know, I'm not familiar with the development process if they come here, and that would be a community development group. And if they come here and present to you before they present to city council on new development, I'm not sure what that process. And you're not. Or,
Yeah, I'm in community development. I'm the sustainability manager. Most of that, I think what you're talking about would be related to planning and the planning commission. The
oh,
degree to which they accept new development, the zoning of places, if we, a certain city could decide to be much more aggressive about conservation. And if they wanted to do that, then planning division would then change code or restrict code to, allow or not allow certain developments to come in. So
Right. And
I
it's
think,
just the process of who gets consulted first or is consulted before a decision is made.
right. So yeah, the commissions are passive in the sense that they meet to confer on actions that the city wants to take. I think if you wanted to get upstream of that, then you would, as a citizen, attend something like the planning commission or write to city manager or, to myself and,
Okay.
express your. But Amber, you're up to that?
can I start?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
All right, I'll start. All right, the challenges in the sanitary sewer system. One is regulations. They're regulated under the state under a general order that requires overflow reduction through inspection, maintenance, rehab, and replacement, and capacity management. And the key here is to keep sewer inside the sewer pipe, never above ground, never outside. Growth and development. The sewer system must be expanded to provide capacity for population growth according to the 2035 general. And the last challenge is aging infrastructure. The city must manage the condition and performance of existing pipes, manholes, and pump stations, and keep inflow and infiltration out. So the graphic in front of you shows how when it rains, stormwater can infiltrate the sanitary sewer system and overwhelm it, causing overflow. So here's the city, and it's color-coded by the age of the sewer. So the red and the purples are being the oldest. The greens and the blues are the newest. There are 14 wastewater lift pumping stations that convey all the wastewater through 22 miles of force mains, which are pressurized pipes, to the lower northwest interceptor, and that takes it to Elk Grove, the treatment plant. Generally, most of the aging infrastructure is in the north, and growth and development is in the south and along the river. Some of the aging infrastructure on here we have currently updated. So we did State Streets a few years ago. So we also look at an overflow risk management approach, lower the risk of sewage overflowing from the system. So our number one goal is to keep the sewage in the system and not allow it to overflow. That's called a sanitary sewer overflow, and it's met with a lot of regulations. We have to write a whole report to the state every time it happens. So the master plan uses a risk management approach to lower the risk of sewer overflowing from the system. And we calculate the likelihood and consequence of an overflow on every sewer line. So if we're near to, like, say, a school or a river or a canal, those are much more higher consequence than maybe just a field somewhere. So, for example, if a pump station is both highly likely to overflow and the failure is a high consequence to the city, it's in the red zone, which means it would be scheduled first. And this is similar to how we prioritize the water project as well. So the sewer preventative maintenance plan addresses the aging infrastructure. And this is another example of overflow risk management approach. And so we use it to categorize our maintenance work. So everything that is the black line means that we've already TV'd it. Because it's gravity sewer, we can put a camera inside and actually look at all the sewers. So the black lines are lines that we've cameraed. The purple are the highest risk pipes where chronic roots, grease, or debris clog the pipes, so the city crews clean those the most often. The city cleans them and CCTs them to reduce the risk. And there's still a handful of red lines to clean in this next year. So some of the red lines are already black because we've cleaned them in the last year. And some areas are so full of grease, typically, is stuff that might coagulate often, like near restaurants or people who throw a lot of food stuff down the drain. We clean them every 3 months just to keep them clear. And just as a public notice, fat, oils, and grease do not go down your drain ever. You may have a sewer overflow. Same concept applied to pump station maintenance and repair, gravity sewer inspection. So we can, we've been looking at all the pump stations, looking at all the systems of the different pumps and making sure that they're all in good working order. And if they're too small or they're very old, we put it in the matrix to decide when to replace them. So, and then also we need to look at growth and development. And so again, we have projects that we're expecting. And those sewer extensions are shown here in dark blue. So in the dark blue is what we would expect to have to build when new development comes in. And it would be triggered by that development. Currently, there's a lot of septic systems in the city. And those lines, the lines that we would build to like take people off septic are in light blue. Kind of looks purple on this screen, but they are not in the capital improvement plans, or those are paid by the developer, the dark blue, and the light blue is not planned for 10 years. So don't get too excited if you're on septic. We don't have a plan to do it right away, unfortunately. So the master plan also presents a rehab replacement plan to address aging infrastructure. The blue sewers in the Westmore Oaks area are planned for rehabilitation next year. We're also going to be putting a new water line there. Also of note are the Largo and Washington and Bright areas. They are orange and yellow on here. And those are areas that we see a lot of infiltration. So we are thinking of doing a smoke test, which is another way to find infiltration. And what you do is you put smoke into the sewer system and it comes up wherever there's like a crack, or maybe someone accidentally connected their storm drain into the sewer system. And we would find those and be able to like have an action plan for reducing the sewer flows in those areas. On the right, you see the capacity improvement plan, which includes upsizing a handful of existing sewers because they are undersized. And so those undersized sewers, like I said before, master planning is usually a little conservative. So they're not too small currently. They're only too small, unlike if everyone was using the sewer at highest capacity on the rainiest day of the year. Yeah, that would maybe cause a problem. So it's not like, oh, these are too small and we're causing overflows every day. No, they're just like the worst of the worst. So those are projects that we'll tackle as we get to those systems either if we do start seeing overflows in that area, or if the pipe reaches its end of life and we have to replace it anyway. We would just upsize it, make it a little bit bigger. And then I guess the Largo pump stations, which is to the south here, is the very south one, is expected to have a force main rerouted to the south to free up capacity in the Southport pump station. So that will be when development happens in that South Port area. So for sewer, oh, am I going? For sewer, we have a lot less assets. We don't have tanks. We don't have a wastewater treatment plant. So the county of Sacramento, the Sac Regional, runs the treatment plant. So our 10-year capital improvement plan is a little bit more affordable. In the first 5 years, it's $54 million. In 5 to 10 years, it's $56 million. So the annual allocation is about $11 million per year. So the master plan includes a 10-year capital improvement plan for city funded. This is just city funded, not developer funded. Rehab replacement project, capacity improvement, and maintenance inspection project that we contract out rather than do in-house because of staff needs. So these will be in the upcoming rate study that should come out next year. And I know that the rate study will come here and talk to you guys first before they go to city. And so there'll be some constraints on that because our capital project department doesn't have the staff to fund so many projects. So we'll probably reduce to what is feasible. Or we'll ask for money for more staff, depending on what we think is better. So these are just plans, they're suggestions. They put in everything that we think we could possibly need. And then the rate study is going to bring us back to reality a little bit. So don't worry. Or worry when the rate study folks come through. I'll probably be back then. Is there any questions?
I have a question about aging infrastructure. So I know my neighborhood, a lot of people still have Orangeburg piping.
Yes.
And, I have neighbors who they've had breaches, but they've like somehow gotten them repaired or they've ignored them because it's of the cost to do it. I mean, I did it years and years and years ago, and it was like an emergency burst, and it cost like $5,000 to get it done in an emergency. So, like, are there plans as part of the aging infrastructure to like assist residents to get some of that updated? Because I know like just the fact that they have these really old, what was supposed to be temporary piping is going to cause releases into the environment from their system, from their own wastewater. And then on top of that, we also, most of us have a Y connection, which I know is not as secure and ideal. So I just want to know if there was plans within that aging infrastructure, because I'm in that pre-1950s aging infrastructure to help like residents, one, educate them about what to do if these things happen, and then also about like helping them to get it fixed and to have the city remove the Y connections. So
Anything that's behind 3 foot of the sidewalk is private property.
Right.
So typically it's your property. So you have to replace it. What I suggest everybody does every time they buy a house is inspect the sewer with a camera, $200, and then if it needs to be replaced, get it replaced, and maybe you can make it part of the contract. Yeah, they typically, it depends. You can line a sewer and it's a little cheaper, but with Orangeburg, it's basically cardboard.
it is part, yeah.
So,
And tar.
Yeah.
But I
so
think the problem is a lot of
it's-
people bought these houses or they've
Mhm.
been there forever. Like I have
Exactly.
neighbors who are original owners, you know? And so it's like they've been there forever and that expense wasn't considered because they just didn't understand. And I think some community members don't really understand that that lateral is part, you know, is their responsibility. So like if there was a way that the city could find grants or something to help with updating that. I mean, I don't know if there's anything within Prop 4, but there's a lot of like water conservation and climate action and environmental help. So there's a lot of things within that that are providing grants from different agencies. So I don't know if there's anything in that. But something like that to help those communities, because I mean, no matter what you do in those communities, updating the city infrastructure, if their home infrastructure is still cardboard,
Yeah.
it's like, it's not really going to give us the results that we want. So, and that's really the complaint or the thing I've heard from people like, oh, I know I have Orangeburg, but I can't afford to update it. And like, so that's, and like your home insurance won't do it if there's a burst because it's not underneath your property, or it's not underneath your home. It has to,
Oh, okay.
yeah, it has to be like directly underneath your home, so they won't cover the lateral that goes from the home to the sewer. Yeah, and the Y connections generally, I think, are the cities because they're right there. So then that's another problem. And that's also a problem for fixing it. That's like, ours was more expensive because it was a Y connection. That was, and so that, you know, that also compounds the cost when a lot of people have bought these houses in the past because they were less expensive, and it was, you know, affordable for them to buy it. So like, that's something to consider.
Ideally, we would remove all those Y connections
Yeah.
in Orangeburg, at least to the city cleanout, because that would save the city money.
Yeah.
Because we'd have less overflow.
Yeah.
So that is something that we're looking into, but our maintenance staff is very robust.
Yeah.
They're good at emergencies, and they can't really get ahead on preventative maintenance. And the city
Yes.
was run so long without doing preventative maintenance that's why sometimes we're just way behind in being innovative in our rehabilitation for the utilities, because it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. And so with the downturn and everything, and just people weren't thinking about it.
Well, and I know that, you know, response for the staff has been really great. Like we
Yeah.
had staff come out to our house because the people who did our work were really bad because it was emergency work, and they came and fixed our Y connection between ours and our neighbors. So, and they're clean out and everything. So like that is, you know, the city's been really good about that. But I think thinking long term, like about the sewer plan, like if that personal infrastructure doesn't get updated, it's not gonna help with the long term for the city.
Yeah.
And so trying to figure out grant programs or something like that you can at least, maybe the city can get it to offer the grant, you know, offer money to help update it, or, you know, some sort of reprieve like that would be really helpful, because I think that would really encourage it. Even if it was just like a percentage of it, that would encourage people to change that infrastructure to help the city managing its sewer system.
Yeah, it's a great idea. I'm gonna check in to see what other cities do, because we're not the only city that owns our lower lateral.
Yeah,
And so, and every city has laterals, so.
right, exactly.
So check and see what other cities do in that case, because I would love to do something to get more people to be able to change out the Orangeburg, because it's not great.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is not great. And so like, yeah. And when it bursts, it's not fun.
Yeah,
So,
there's just nothing to hold on to.
Yeah,
You gotta
exactly.
go all the way.
Yep.
Chase it.
Other questions and comments about the sewer master plan?
Yeah.
Yeah, just a quick question. So you mentioned there's a neighborhood that's going to have sewer upgrades done and at the same time water infrastructure upgrades. That seems like a cost savings potential, and as well as a way to help reduce the amount of disruption in communities as the construction's happening. are the two plans kind of working together? Is there an overlay to try to do that in more places as capital construction moves forward?
Yeah, so it's a model we followed in the State Streets neighborhood, and we designed the project together, although we did them separately, because the sewer was so old that we were afraid any digging would literally make it crumble. So what we did was we lined the sewer first with CIPP, cured in place pipe. It's like a resin filled soft, and you inflate it into the sewer line, you harden it, and then you cut out all the laterals. And so then it's a pipe within a pipe, and it's about half the cost of digging a new one. Plus, we didn't collapse the pipe fully, which is great. And then we did the water line, because the water line, we put in a whole new water line. And so there was a lot of digging for that. But it was done in phases, and the community knew. We tried to present, we were doing the sewer first, and then we were going to do the water, and then we were going to do the paving, which was another issue with state. They have really bad paving there. So that's happening right now. So it's kind of a 3-tier process. Westmore Oaks is kind of the next neighborhood. They're similar with age and the tree situation, and it's just a beautiful neighborhood that, with the updated infrastructure is going to make it that much better. So hopefully at least homeowners will have something strong to tie into at their clean out, their brand new clean out will install. So that might lower the cost a little bit, because you won't have to chase it all the way back to the main pipe.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Any other questions?
Sewer
Thank
is
you
my
so much.
favorite, so.
I know, that's the one. After having gone through the Orangeburg fiasco,
Yes.
that's my favorite one.
Yeah,
Never had a
nobody
pipe
talks
burst
about
in
sewer
sewer until it
again.
goes wrong. But thank you all. I
Thank you so
appreciate
much
your
for the
comments.
report.
Okay.
All right.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
General Administration Function Part 2, item number 5, so Director's Report.
Yeah, so I don't have too many things. I did want to mention that I know this might sound like Sisyphus, but we are close to adopting our climate action plan. We're aiming for January, February. Gone through numerous drafts. The edits to the drafts are getting smaller and smaller and more fine-grained. So I do believe we really are close to adoption. Upon adoption, I am confident that the EU Commission will meet at a much more regular pace. There are going to be a lot of plans, there will be a lot of objectives, there are going to be grants and things that the sustainability team, in addition to other teams like capital improvement, planning, even park, will need to go through the EU Commission for. So I just want to articulate that I do understand it's frustrating that we have not met for a long time. I can't guarantee how often we're going to meet, but I do trust that on adoption of the cap, we will be meeting more often.
All right. Thank you very much.
Suzanne?
I was not aware the draft was that close to adoption. And so I'm just wondering about the notification process when you sign up to receive information of the process that contribute to it, whether this plan that's going to be adopted has subject to any kind of public review or presentation.
Yeah, so it was close to making it to the EU Commission tonight, but it was pulled. So before it goes to council, it'd come to the EU Commission. I'm not in charge of the climate action plan currently, it's in planning, but I can certainly reach out to someone in planning and make sure that the communication aspect of it that you're talking about is still working.
There was an informal group set up around the climate action a couple of years ago. You and I communicated. And that was before the adaptation had been added. to the scope of work for the consultant is standing. And also, as far as I know, there's been no further public outreach or to the formal advisory since anything that's being considered for inclusion into the plan. So my concern is that beyond just this commission reviewing the plan, that members had some opportunity to be aware of what was being planned, and to also provide whatever recommendations you had regarding what. So that it's a two-pronged question, not only when it's for this, but also what extent was whatever is in the plan subject to any kind of general review.
Yeah, so, my understanding, so Seamus in planning is the one who's currently in charge of the climate action plan. He's been steering it from the beginning, maybe not from the beginning, but certainly recently. So I can give you his contact information and,
I have.
okay.
So he ran the other.
Yeah, so he communicated with me that it looks like it's heading towards January or February, and part of that process would be a public workshop component. So there would be public workshops, there would be opportunities for not just the EU Commission, but for the public in general to review the draft and provide feedback. But I don't have as many details as James.
I don't know if this is the appropriate place to say anything. But since you raised it, I'm gonna do it here as opposed to waiting until commission communication. And that's that. I found this meeting very informative. I really appreciated hearing from the staff and understanding a little bit more about various activities that are undertaken by the departments that are sort of under the umbrella of this commission. But I've been quite concerned since this is the first meeting in 2 years since I was appointed and my colleagues here were. And I think that also some of Peter's comments too resonated insofar as being, are there opportunities to be less reactive and passive, as you described, and more proactive in terms of bringing forth not only our concerns. I did meet my colleagues, most of them during orientation. Was very impressed with their levels of expertise in this area. Also, their current affiliation through their job, in terms of up to date about what's going on in these fields. And I think the city is missing an opportunity for the contribution that a commission like this is able to make to the kinds of issues that you undertake, especially with respect to the fact that we are in the midst of a climate crisis that's not going to go away anytime soon, probably within, my lifetime, I'm the oldest one here. So I'm curious, you made a comment that this commission would be meeting more. I've not yet submitted, as I shared with you, an application to be reappointed. But I'm very, very interested, obviously, in the climate action plan, and also as we move into implementation at the county level, and also with respect to the formation of the regional resilience collaborative, the ability to coordinate activity in a way that efficiently uses our resources and also hopefully collectively, through collective, even more beneficial and impressive. So I am interested in your vision for what this commission's role would be going forward as to the point of adopting climate action plan.
Okay, yeah, I can briefly express that, it's My understanding, and again, I apologize for my newness. I'm a new manager, and this is my first commission as well. And
Understood.
my understanding of commissions is they are as needed, and they are advisory plans. So, something like the Planning Commission or TMI, the Transportation and Mobility Commission, they do meet more regularly. They do have more high-end projects that are going to council. So, my understanding is we wouldn't meet just to meet. However, my expectation is that once the climate action plan is adopted, that is going to open the door for a lot of new projects to come through the EU Commission for advice and recommendation. So I don't have a specific, number, and I know you're not asking me for one, but I do expect it's going to be much more regular than it has been.
Thank you. My only comment there is that being a former member and vice chair of the Parks and Rec, they met routinely on the scheduled date every other month, and my impression is that it was not as reactive, but really more proactive in terms of input to the various planning and project processes that were ongoing. And that had to do a lot with the kinds of recreation facilities we're having grants for and developing plans for, and also with respect to the interaction with communities that would serve those recreation. And I believe that, in my observation, it was a very productive process, and was not just have a meeting, but actually interactive with the staff, the consultants, and, but also each of us represents different communities. So we have a good set of representation here from the various community, and my understanding of the role of commission, as it was described in the orientation, that they're also here to provide layers with the perceptions based on our affiliation, as well as our various. So there is a model for it within the city. So I urge you to pursue what the possibilities could be for this more engaged week. These particularly unpredictable and challenging times. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne.
I do want to make a comment. I've been on this commission since 2017. And so in the past, we've been a lot more proactive than we have in the last 2 years, so we were heavily involved in, I started right after they had adopted the master plans that we went over tonight. And I was heavily involved in the updates, so we have, we are also one of the newer, quote unquote, newer commissions, because we started in like 2014, I want to say. So, they had some learning curve, there's a lot of technical stuff that happens with this commission. Yeah, I mean, I am a little bit curious as to why we haven't been as proactive in the last 2 years, but I'd say in the past, it has been very much, we'd get plans coming to us, we would give comments, the city council was always taking our comments into consideration, and it sounds like that's the plan moving forward. So I think it's good that we have, new management that really sees the value of the commission. So. Any other commissioner communications?
I just want to concur because for some things that come up in discussion at the city council. So I think one of the topics that came up was using another utility company. I was like, well, we're in the Utilities Commission, we never heard of this, and we're not going to hear about it, and they're going to discuss it openly in the city council. So those are things that come up, and as I look at the environment and utilities, and I see the discussions in the community, the complaint, and where the complaints are, and where the issues are, it seems like we should be more active in those terms. Now, I don't know in terms of the structured, actionable item that we could actually comment on as opposed to just general complaints, although, they're not here to complain about. I would love for them to be here, and I don't know if that's part of the thing that we need to say, hey, there's a structured way, and we can actually get it heard, and we can actually get it recorded, and then through the process, get it to the council, as opposed to somebody saying something on a Facebook or group chat or whatever, the neighborhood chat, whatever it is. So those are things that I'm hoping as the part of the process that we're helping the city in addressing those issues into some satisfaction.
When I think part of our roles as commissioners in general is just to be that liaison amongst our communities, which is why, we are luckily a diverse community. When I first started, it was all Southport and me. So it was, so it's nice to see that we have diversified across the city. But I think we have to think that as our roles as commissioners, what are we supposed to be doing? And we should be liaison with our actual communities and letting them know and educating them about what they can do to talk to the city and to communicate with the city. I know, I am very involved across the city, Girl Scouts. I volunteer at my daughter's nonprofit preschool. I'm the president there. And I constantly am talking to different community members, and I communicate. If you want to see where the process is, the commission is a really good way to go before you go to city council. I think, keep that in mind, that the city staff aren't going to be able to do all of it, which is why the commissions were pulled together. And I think it's a really great, not all cities have commissions. I think it's great that we have this opportunity to be part of that process. So I do agree that I think there definitely have been things that have passed in the last 2 years that should have probably come to the commission. And I know with some of it that did go through in city council, we had talked about previously years ago in the commission, but we have new commission, and so it should have probably been reintroduced to the commissioners to get a more diversified viewpoint than we had in the past. Right, more modern
time
viewpoint.
passes.
Well, and like I said, we were very siloed, and we had Southport and then me as the one person in the north for a while, for several years. And so as we've diversified, you get that good input from the whole community that way. Yeah.
So in the context of your comment of making something, recorded on the record rather than just saying it, I would like to put my support on record for a separate water recycling plant for gray water use for things like irrigation and landscaping, particularly in the context of, there's discussed development, including a golf course. I think if that's going to be in any way considered, we're going to need some way to address that in a sustainable way. So I think that would be a great avenue to explore, even if it is, as you said, difficult to do and takes the time. I do think it is. I thank you for bringing this to us and for considering those diverse ranges of technologies and solutions available to you, because it's not an easy task to do by any stretch. So thank you.
I parrot that. I appreciate the progressiveness of our city despite how small we are. So, yeah. And thank you for bringing us into the fold on that. All right, any other communication? All right, if we don't have anything else, then we will be adjourning the meeting at 7:33 p.m. Do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
A motion to adjourn.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, then the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.